welcome into a mini version of This is MLS. I'm your host, Kaylin Kyle, joined along the likes of Andrew Levy and Kaylin Carr. Gentlemen, let's get into it because the Concacaf Champions Cup has not disappointed this season. Last night we saw Vancouver and Inter Miami in the second leg down in South Florida. But before that, in the first leg, it was the Vancouver Whitecaps that took a 2-0 lead in leg one with a goal from Sebastian Berhalter and Brian White. They then took it down to Lionel Messi's home and ended up thrashing them 3-1 in a dominant performance from start to finish, which ultimately puts the Vancouver Whitecaps in the final of the Concacaf Champions Cup. What was the biggest takeaway from this game, guys?
Well, for me, it's Vancouver Whitecaps. They're the story. I know all the attention was on Inter Miami, but they put their name in history as a way to go all the way to the Concacaf Champions Cup, the biggest result in club history. And it wasn't a fluke. They did it in both legs. They did it by the way that Jesper Sorensen set this team up. They went at Miami, and the best way forward sometimes is to keep pushing the pedal. We've seen teams sit back a little bit, and it's almost like waiting to die for Inter Miami to make these historic comebacks, but they just kept going, and Miami couldn't cope with it. The athleticism, the speed in transition, Brian White, Ali Ahmed was gliding by guys, the cutbacks was on, Sebastian Berhalter, Vite, and just overwhelmed Miami through both legs.
Kaylin, I kind of feel like we've been waiting for Miami to be the punchers in these big games. And that LAFC series, it started to feel like maybe this Messi and Miami and his friends, maybe they were starting to take the leap that we all expected when he arrived. And it just didn't happen. This is yet another disappointment in a parade of failures for Inter Miami in the biggest moments. If you think back to the playoffs last year, US Open Cup final, any competition realistically since the Leagues Cup when Messi arrived, and yes, we can count the Supporters' Shield, but that was followed by a disappointment. Miami has fallen short. This is becoming a pattern, and there's another big competition on the horizon for this team, the Club World Cup. The pressure on this club right now is absolutely immense, and the fallout starts immediately.
Let's talk about patterns, because the Vancouver Whitecaps currently sitting top of the Supporters' Shield in Major League Soccer, being able to juggle multiple competitions, going down to Monterrey, going down to Pumas, and then going down to Miami and knocking off what we all said is the best team in Major League Soccer heading into 2025. So Andrew, for you, is this the best historical run that we have seen in the Concacaf Champions Cup?
Seattle Sounders fans, I apologize. Toronto FC, I know you're going to yell about it, but yes, this Vancouver Whitecaps run to the final is the best we've seen from an MLS team in CONCACAF competition. The reasons are pretty deep here. Number one, it's a longer, more difficult run, in my opinion, than Toronto FC had to do. Toronto did not have a first round. It was round of 16 on for Toronto. You didn't mention, Kaylin, the Saprissa leg to start all of this. Vancouver had to beat the Purple Monster, the best team in Costa Rica, and then move on to Mexican competition and then beat Messi and Miami. That Toronto team, yes, they had Tigres and Club America, but they got to start with the Colorado Rapids and they had one less series. And the bigger difference to me is where the two clubs were when the runs happened. Toronto were expected to make that run. It was a team of superstars, of champions, Jovinko, Josie, Michael Bradley, Victor Vasquez, and an absolute laundry list of champs. Vancouver don't have that history. They're doing this on their own. It is, for me, the biggest single leap I've ever seen from an MLS team year over year. Now they have every opportunity to get it done in the final.
Kaylin, has the Vancouver Whitecaps cemented themselves as the best team in Major League Soccer heading into match day 11?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And not just in Major League Soccer. They're making a case for the continent, for this entire region. And, if they get past this next into the final and win it, and that's the one piece where I would maybe push back a little bit, Weeby, is just saying, yes, to get to the final, but MLS teams we've seen make it to the final in the past, going through the history with RSL, Montreal, Toronto, as you mentioned, LAFC, but not getting over that final hurdle, and Seattle was the team to get it done 3-0 at home still. But the thing that I like about this Vancouver team is the way that they've held themselves on the road, going to Mexico, conceding late versus Pumas, still finding a way to get through that. They've gone three times on the road in second legs. Nobody in CONCACAF Champions history have done that. They may have to do it again in the final. But based on the way that this team has played, you beat Lionel Messi, the best player in the world, at his house. Who are you going to be afraid of? You've already gone to Mexico and done it. So I think this team right now is absolutely flying. And yes, Best team in MLS. They're at the top of the Supporters Shield. I think they made a huge statement last night, but not just for MLS. I think when you look broader through North America, they're making their case, and one game left to prove it.
Kalen, I think you said it. The perch is temporary. Undoubtedly, based on the results, the Vancouver Whitecaps are the best team in MLS. They could prove they're the best team in the region. But Jesper Sorensen has them thinking in a different way than I've ever seen a Caps team before. He has them focused, able to react to moments where they go down. Remember, in Pumas, they were minutes away from being eliminated from this competition. When Miami get an early goal and start putting the pressure on, everybody's looking around in that stadium thinking, yeah, Messi and Miami are going to do it. So for Vancouver right now, I think their strength is that they know they have to prove it every single time out. Now prove it in the final. And if they do, it will be by far the greatest run ever by an MLS team in Concacaf.
Disappointing news, though, Weeby. I know me and you spoke about this before we came on.
Heartbreaking.
Sebastian Berhalter, arguably one of the best and most consistent players with the Vancouver Whitecaps right now in that number 8 role. Maybe one of the best out-and-out number 8s in Major League Soccer, that box-to-box midfielder. He will be suspended for the final due to yellow card accumulation. A huge loss for the team.
A massive loss for the Whitecaps. And Sorensen talked about it last night. He said he's just heartbroken for the player because of what he's put in and what he's earned via his performances. For me, Berhalter has been the best 8 in this competition and the best 8 in Major League Soccer. Both sides of the ball, the biggest moments, he has been there with goals and assists and match-saving defensive plays. There has to be a change, to me, in the way that we think about suspensions heading into finals. It is unjust for a player who was not sent off in these games to not be able to play in the final. It defeats the entire purpose, which is to me to have two teams at their very peak competing against each other in the biggest game of the competition. There has to be serious thought put into changing these rules. I understand. If Berhalter had gotten a red card, sure, no final for him. But a yellow card, not an egregious foul, a normal play in an uber competitive match, I don't think Berhalter or any player should be punished for that. And I've thought that for years. This is just the latest proof in my mind.
But Vancouver have proven they've done it without their big superstars like Ryan Gauld or resting players when they have gone down to Mexico and have still gotten the results. But it's such a shame because he's such a pivotal player to their success. Let's shift focus to Inter Miami. Was this the biggest loss of the Messi era there?
I mean, I think it's one of a few now at this point, and that's where the concern comes in, is that this hasn't just been a one-off performance where, Vancouver have their day. So I said they beat them in both legs. They had a best-of-3 series in the MLS Cup playoffs against an 8 seed last year in Atlanta United and couldn't get it done. They lost at home in the U.S. Open Cup final to Houston Dynamo. I mean, there's been a number of performances now at this point where over multiple legs at home, this Miami team is actually worse. In the one-off over the course of the regular season, we've seen what they've been able to do, winning the Supporters Shield and setting the points record. But in the Cup tournaments, that's where your legacy is defined. I understand, yes, they have a Leagues Cup and a Supporters Shield. That's not enough for the ambitions of this Inter Miami project. What was promised, what is expected. Lionel Messi has had control of everything, bringing in his players, his friends, his managers, former teammates. He's set this whole club up, and now it has fallen once again right before the final hurdle. So it's been a disappointment. I think a ton of pressure. You're right, Andrew. Club World Cup, MLS Cup playoffs heading down to the end of this season. But there's some concern because in these multiple legs, they get worse. That's where you see athletic teams like Vancouver, Atlanta, Houston being able to push the game and cause them problems. Once they got in transition, Miami couldn't really come back and defend the secondary pursuit. Berhalter, Vite streaking in. The second goal in the first leg for me was the one that changed the series, with Berhalter getting to the back post there. And Miami's never going to chase back in those positions. And so one-on-one duels was the way Sorensen set this team up to get the ball up to Brian White, that hold-up play. Then you get isolated on the wings. The deep runs come in, the cutbacks, and Miami's just watching. They're spectators at this point. They continue to push the gas. That's where they put this game out of reach. But Miami, absolutely disappointing. And I think for the project overall, some big questions.
It's the same questions we've asked about Miami for a long time now, even during the Shield winning season and that accumulation of points. Can they defend in space? Jesper Sorensen said after the game last night, our goal was sometimes just to skip lines. Play the ball off of Brian White, win a second ball. If we were in space, 1v1, we felt we were going to tear this team up, and they did that. And to answer your question, Kalen, off the jump, no, this is not the worst loss in Miami history. And it says a lot that it isn't. It's actually Atlanta last year, coming off a supporters shield when they were by far the best team in the league and had what should have been an insurmountable advantage with 2 out of 3 games at home against a team that was scraping and clawing just to get into the playoffs. This loss is against a Caps team in uber form, who had created belief in themselves, who had gotten a result in the first leg. Make no mistake, though, it's still a disaster for them, and that means Javier Mascherano is under intense pressure. The last 8 games for Inter Miami, 4 losses, 2 draws. Those draws, by the way, were against Chicago, below the playoff line in the East, and Toronto at the bottom of the East, and just 2 wins. That's not acceptable for the standards that Inter Miami are chasing, and right now, the key word there is chasing. They're not there.
Let's chase ourselves to the final, because the final will be taking place June 1st, so just a month away as of today. Currently, Tigres and Cruz Azul in leg 1 were 1-1 on aggregate. The second leg is happening here tonight. So if Tigres wins or Cruz Azul win, they will host the final due to points. Now, if that game goes to a draw, the Vancouver Whitecaps will host the final on June 1st. How do you see this going? I know right now it's currently tied 1-1, so we don't know who they will play in the final, but whether it's Tigres or Cruz Azul, can Vancouver Whitecaps get the job done in a one-off game?
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
the thing that you said that stuck out to me as well was 1 month away. And that got me thinking, Ryan Gauld, where can he be in a month from now? Because that's the piece of this that's so incredible is all through the last several years, it was White and Gauld, 1-2 tandem. And now it's a whole team, right? You've seen the emergence of Sebastian Berhalter. You've seen Pedro Vite take that next step. Ali Ahmed in the back with Vasilinovic and Blackman. Ocampo on the right back position. He's been a revelation at just 20 years old, going against some of the best players in history. And this team has just gotten stronger, but it's been without their star. So if Ryan Gauld can get back playing through these MLS fixtures, he looks close to me and can play a part maybe off the bench even in a final. What a card to play if you're Jasper Sorensen. This Vancouver team could be absolutely buzzing.
Okay, you got the ace in Ryan Gauld, Kalen. I'm going to break out the king, which is Sam Adekugbe, who's been hurt and out for most of this as well. Tate Johnson's done an amazing job straight out of college, but in a final, you want to have Sam Adekugbe on the field, and that may yet be possible for this Caps team in Sorensen as well. The reason why I believe in Vancouver is because it seems like the core of this club has changed. And it's not an overnight change. It's a build over multiple seasons. We even saw a little flash of it in the playoffs last year. But I think the key is Jesper Sorensen. He is elevating all of the players within this style of play, but it's not just tactical, it's psychological. Vancouver, as you know, Kalen, were known as a team that fell short in the biggest moments. Sorensen does not have that scar tissue. He walked into that locker room, saw the players at his disposal, and he put belief in them. And then the results absolutely calcified that belief. This team believes that they can get it done in this massive moment. And I'm not sure there's been a Vancouver Whitecaps team that's believed that since they entered Major League Soccer. And then the tactics are just so much more varied than we saw in previous seasons. They can play with the ball and build out of the back, one of the better possession teams in the league. They can go direct to Brian White, and they have difference makers all over the field in positions to be successful. This Vancouver Whitecaps team has every opportunity to make history against any Liga MX opponent they've got right now.
Andrew, I'm putting you on the hot seat right now because currently I have goosebumps listening to you speak about my Vancouver Whitecaps. For people that don't know, I grew up with the club. That's why this is my club. Now, speaking of the U.S. men's national team, Mauricio Pochettino, we saw him bring in Diego Luna from RSL and arguably had one of the best performance, most consistent performance the last international window. Do you see or potentially see Sebastian Berhalter or Brian White in that 2026 Men's World Cup roster?
Oh, World Cup. I thought we were going Gold Cup. You're
No,
really putting me on the spot right now.
No, I'm going World Cup.
No, you're going World Cup. I think that's the right conversation. I can see it. Do I expect it for Sebastian Berhalter? No, because he just hasn't been with this group, and it's hard to break in this way at such a late date. For Brian White, I can see it. I think Brian White, who's already been in with Pochettino and this team, by the way, given his form, given his profile, can force his way in, especially because there are so many injuries among that starting group of U.S. forwards. Brian White has every opportunity to do so, but he needs to keep this thermonuclear form in the league up and also do it with the national team.
Well, I love it. That does it for us for this mini version of This is MLS. Kaylin Kyle, Andrew Weavy, and Kaylin Carr. A massive congratulations to the Vancouver Whitecaps who have officially booked their spot into the Concacaf Champions Cup. They'll be taking on either Tigres or Cruz Azul